We have seen the Giggle and there is so much to talk about. James, I feel like I'm still processing the episode a little bit. But what did you make of Doctor Who's final 60th anniversary special?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely still processing as well. I think it was so fast-paced and everything was being thrown at you every second of it. So I think I had to go back, rewatch it. And I think now, having seen it a couple of times, I did really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think it is really strong. It's probably not my favorite of the three specials. I think the second one still holds that for me. But I think it's just, in terms of the structure of the story, I think it all works. And I just loved Neil Patrick Harris as the toy maker. I think he was so much fun. He brought so much energy to that role. And I think as soon as you got a good villain in the episode, I think that brings it up a notch every time.
Yeah, half the job's done. And I think especially that spice up your life sequence, he was clearly having a lot of fun. Something we've never seen in Doctor Who before. We should talk about the big moment of the episode though, which is the bi-generation, which is a concept that has never been seen in Doctor Who before, never even been referenced before. It's totally new. Did you feel like it worked?
I think as a one-off in this one instance, I think so, yes. I think it worked in terms of the story as to where it left David Tennant's Doctor. I think it worked as a 60th anniversary sort of big moment. In terms of what it means for future Doctors or perhaps past Doctors, we can get onto that in a bit. I think maybe not so much, but in this one episode, it worked for me. But what about you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of where we leave David Tennant's Doctor. You know, he's split off from the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, and he gets a kind of happy ending, I guess. And he's retired, I guess, which is interesting. He's parked now, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing: is that he's still got a TARDIS. So not only is he off having adventures and things like that, which I find a little bit strange when it's he's meant to be retiring kind of thing. But also it does mean he can pop up at any time. Yeah. Any time that we want to see David Tennant again in an episode in the future, which realistically we'll probably do at some point, he can just come straight back. So I think that's definitely on the table. So it's a little bit of a strange thing where you're thinking, well, this is an ending for him, but it's also somewhat of a sort of, okay, well, we're beginning a new phase of him being able to pop up whenever he wants.
And I have to say, I do really like the idea for the 60th anniversary to give Doctor Who what is effectively a series finale, you know, a closure to the whole thing, is that Doctor is finally retiring, finally taking time, finally taking stock, having some therapy to deal with all the trauma he's experienced, while simultaneously you're doing a series reboot, which is, you know, Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor out in time and space. But I do think, you know, are you over-egging it slightly by allowing the 14th Doctor to keep his TARDIS? You effectively, as you say, got two Doctors out there roaming time and space, maybe more, which we'll get onto. But let's talk a bit about the man of the moment, which is Ncuti Gatwa. We got a pretty sizable glimpse of him here before he takes up the mantle kind of full time at Christmas. What did you make of his performance?
I thought he was great. I think he brings so much energy to the role just in those 15, 20 minutes we see of him at the end of the episode. And I think it's a strange way to get to know him, because you're getting to know him alongside David Tennant, a lot of people's favourite Doctor still to this day. But I think he held his own, and not only that, I think the fact that he was kind of the one who was in charge and who was sort of the older, wiser Doctor who was sort of giving advice to David Tennant's Doctor really worked. Because if it was the other way around, you'd be thinking he was sort of lesser in some way, particularly with the bi-generation that he's come off him. You kind of think, okay, he's a lesser version of the Doctor, but he's not. He's very much the forefront at the end of this, and you're thinking, okay, he's the main one we're going to be focusing on going off.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a real danger with the way they did it, that it could have felt like in his debut, Ncuti is playing second fiddle to the existing Doctor, David Tennant, who the audience already has so much affection for. I think that didn't happen for a couple of reasons. One is that Ncuti is just a charisma bomb, so we'll never play second fiddle on screen to anyone. But also, as you say, the fact that he's actually portrayed as the more mature of the two Doctors, the one who's a little more wise and sage and is able to say, you know, you need to step back, you need to take some time. But there is another implication to this whole bi-generation thing, which is Russell T Davies has said, this isn't just two Doctors bi-generating, this is a whole timeline bi-generating. And in fact, if you go back, I think I'm getting this right, but every single Doctor who has previously regenerated, in fact, bi-generated into a splinter timeline. So all the Doctors who sort of died actually are still out there roaming the universe with their own TARDISes. How are we feeling about that?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I think if I had an issue with the episode overall, if I had a major issue, it's that I think there was a lot of just sort of hand waving and a lot of, okay, he's bigenerated. We don't know why that's happened. We don't know quite how that's happened. We don't know what it means.
Something else is happening now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we later hear from Russell and from the team, this is what it means.
It's not even on screen. Yeah.
No, exactly. And so for the moment, we don't know if that's canon to the show. We don't know if that's going to play any part going forward. But probably, because Russell's in charge, and realistically, if he thinks that, probably so. But yeah, as a concept, I'm a little bit mixed on it, because I think, part of the joy of the multi-Doctor stories is that you've always got some shenanigans to make them come together. And the idea is it's not meant to happen. And so when it happens, it's a big moment. And suddenly if it's like, well, it can happen anytime and it's really not that difficult at all, then it kind of lessens the impact. And particularly if the suggestion is you're just going to have Doctors popping up all over the shop. Then,
yeah. And people have said, what is the real difference here? Old Doctors have always come back to the show. But I think for me, it's unclear how much the Doctor knows this is happening, but if the Doctor always knows at that moment of change that he's not, quote unquote, dying, that version of him isn't dying, he's just going off into a splinter timeline, it robs that moment of some of its dramatic heft, I think. As you say, we don't know what's going to happen with it. It'll all be very much in the execution, I think, to see whether or not it works. Well, let us know what you thought of the Giggle, and be sure to head to radiotimes.com for all of our Doctor Who coverage.